This episode includes discussions about mental health issues, including anxiety and depression, which may be triggering for some listeners. If you or someone you know is struggling with these issues, we encourage you to reach out to a mental health professional or contact a helpline. The University of Texas offers mental health services through Healthy Horns. If you're in need of immediate help, call 512-471-2255 to speak with a crisis counselor at any time. Additional resources can be found at healthyhorns.utexas.edu/CMHC.
At the end of the day, I'm saving conservatively $35,000 by living in a co-op as opposed to living in a West Campus apartment over the 3 years of living there. That's a huge deal.
They say college is the best 4 years of your life. And where you live and who you live with is a big part of what makes it so great. I'm Laura. I talk with students across the country about their college living experiences, the good, the bad, and the memorable, so you can learn from them and truly make these your best 4. This episode is brought to you by Rambler Austin. Rambler is a student apartment located in West Campus, just blocks away from the University of Texas. Y'all, this place is stunning. The first time that I walked in, I was absolutely blown away. I want you to think Tulum meets Austin meets retro. Also, the amenities are insane. They have a sauna, a resort-style pool, 2-level gym, and my personal favorite, on-site coffee shop called Daydreamer Cafe. The Rambler Matcha, my personal fave. I highly recommend checking out their website, rambleratx.com, for loads of information about anything you need to know about student housing. Plus, you can get your application fee waived by using the code THEBEST4. So again, application fee waived by using the code THEBEST4. THEBESTFOUR. Today, I'm here with Joseph. Hi, Joseph.
Hey, Laura, how's it going?
Good. Thank you for being here today.
Of course, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah,
Very
so
excited.
you're usually behind the camera.
Yes, I am.
On the other
Sitting
side.
right over there.
Yeah. So you're a video production intern.
Yeah.
And so you do a lot with the podcast and video. And I remember after one of our interviews recently, we asked you where you lived. And you said you lived at a co-op.
Yes, I do.
And so we immediately had a million questions just right then and there about it. And so we knew that we had to get you on the podcast to talk about it. So.
Absolutely. I think they're a very fascinating thing to talk about. I love living there.
Well, we're going to get into it. But before we do, so for those that don't know you, introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah. I'm Joseph. I grew up in a little suburb outside of Dallas called Richardson, Texas. Now going to UT. I'm a film student. I guess the dream goal, ultimately, hopefully, is to write and direct feature-length movies or TV shows.
Yeah.
One of those. But really, I just like being creative. So I guess anything that allows me to do that is something that I'll be very happy with.
So you're a film major at
Yes.
UT.
Mm-hmm.
And you knew that you wanted to do that.
Yes, I've known since, I can't remember ever not knowing that that's what I wanted to do. Like when I was 9 or 10 years old, I started a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Minecraft Let's Plays, Lego stop motion, sketch comedy, fake trailers.
Fun.
You name it. That's what I grew up on.
So you knew UT was up there for you in terms of colleges that you wanted to go to.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about your application process at UT and how you got in? And
It was a while ago, but I think there's Common App, I think, is the thing where Texas schools, you can basically do one application and send it off to all of them. So you don't have to be
nice.
I want to send one here and
Yeah.
there and there. It's kind of one and done. It was pretty simple. I was in the top 6% of my graduating class, so I was fortunate to have the auto admission status, which was really helpful and definitely aided in my decision to come here. But yeah, it was pretty seamless. I always knew that this is where I wanted to go, so
yeah.
yeah.
And you ended up at Morehill your
Yes.
freshman year.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that and how that happened?
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny story. It's like a cautionary tale, but I don't know, I guess I must have missed an email or something, a newsletter that UT sent out where they were like, hey, you have to apply for housing.
Right.
I don't know where I got the impression, but I had always thought that it's freshmen have to live on campus. And in my brain, it was freshmen have to live on campus. There's no way we have to apply to live on campus.
Right.
They're just going to give us a room. All of a sudden, it was March of my spring semester of senior year before I had to like go to school when I finally realized like, oh, they're sending out like room assignments now.
Yeah.
And I'm not getting mine. What's going on? I realized like, oh, like I was supposed to apply like months ago for housing.
Yeah.
And so my dad and I, like we emailed immediately. We were like, please like give me anything, put me anywhere. Like, I don't care. Just give me a room. Like, we're desperate.
Yeah.
And they were like, all right, great. We have a basement room in Morehill. That's what you're getting. I was like, that's awesome. Thank God I have a place to live. But that's kind of how that happened. I was not proactive
So you
about
would
that.
recommend an incoming freshman to...
Yeah, for sure. You can apply for housing before you even been admitted to the school. Like, as soon as you submit your application for the school, you can submit an application for housing.
Oh, nice.
And I mean, I would say if you know that you're going to live on campus, just go ahead and do those both at the same time. There's not really a reason not to.
So you didn't even know about the off-campus dorms?
I had no idea. I didn't know anything about where you could potentially live. Yeah, I did not know there were more options for freshmen.
So you ended up in a basement room.
I ended up in a basement with a lovely window that gave you about a foot and then a giant cement wall.
Oh, okay.
At least there was a window.
Yeah.
Silver linings
least
here,
there
I
was a
guess. Like,
window.
sunlight came down into the little crevice that I got to see.
Just a little bit, yeah.
So, you know, if I was really lucky, maybe some light might shine through for half an hour or so.
Yeah. And so that Morehill is close to Jester West, right?
Yeah, there's kind of like a whole like collection of dorms on the southeast side of campus. So you have like Morehill, you have your Jesters, you have San Jacinto, a couple others that are smaller that I can't remember the names of right now. But it was a convenient location, honestly. Like,
Yeah. Did you like living over there?
I did. There were things personally, like just for my conveniences, that were nice and not so nice. Like, one thing that I really enjoyed was being super close to two of the on-campus dining halls.
Yeah.
So J2 and Jester City Limits are obviously both in Jester. And I mean, you walk outside Morehill and you're looking at the Jesters.
Right.
So 2-3 minute walk and I'm at a dining hall, which is really convenient. It's close to a lot of other things like Greg Gym, the gymnasium on campus. That's really convenient.
Yeah.
The stadium is right there.
So location was pretty good.
Location was good.
Yeah.
There were some downsides to it. So I'm a Moody College of Communications student, being a film major, and that's on the northwest side of campus. So in terms of that placement, that's about as far as it could have been. It didn't end up being that bad. It's still like a 15-minute walk. I still did really like the location.
What was the culture like at Morehill?
Morehill was very quiet. I wouldn't necessarily say like introverted because there was certainly a community there. People did like to talk, but it's not like a Jester where there's like constantly something happening. Like you walk out at any hour of the day and like something's going on.
Yeah.
It was a lot more like tight-knit. Yeah, just quieter, I would say. Like we had like a nice like public like common game room.
Right.
People would always be playing pool there, watching something on the TV.
And I wanted to talk to you about your roommate at Morehill.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, getting housing secured so late, obviously I didn't get a pick in who my roommate was. I got a random roommate assigned. He, like, there was nothing wrong at all. Like, he was not like it wasn't like a problematic relationship. It was just like we never spoke.
Right.
Which is just a very bizarre experience
It
to
is,
live
yeah.
in a little tiny box with another human for an entire 9 months and literally never ever have a conversation. In a way it was nice because I'm like, oh, I can come home, I don't have to like also now expend energy here, but I also do think that had I had a roommate I could talk to, it probably would have been very helpful.
That kind of ties into what I wanted to talk about next, which was your experience freshman year. I think that other people hearing this can probably relate to how you felt your freshman year, and also incoming freshmen might have some fears and some anxieties about leaving home. So I think your story is really powerful. So I just wanted you to talk about a little bit how your freshman year was.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess my freshman year, one of the biggest lessons that I learned was I don't handle change very well. There were just a lot of factors that went into, to put it bluntly, like just the worst mental health of my life that I've ever had. Really, it was just like my baseline level of like anxiety and depression were just higher than they'd ever been. And it's really tough because when you come into your freshman year, like this is supposed to be like, this is when I reinvent myself. This is like the beginning of the rest of my life. Every day I'm going to go out and like meet a new friend group and like find people that I'll talk to for the rest of my life and like go to all these crazy parties and join all these groups. And it's like this weird level of dissonance when you don't have the energy to do any of that and you just kind of feel like you're lagging behind.
Yeah. Any advice you would give somebody who might be going through a tough time right now or is an incoming freshman and might be a little bit nervous about their freshman year? Any advice you would give them?
Yes,
having
absolutely.
been through it?
Yeah. I would say just put yourself out there, but ultimately it really is just like your life is more relatable than you might think it is. I know we're like flooded with all these images, like everyone talking and posting about like all the fun that they're having.
Yeah.
But really the other side of the experience is just as common, and you should never feel like you're completely alone in that journey.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, like even if it feels like it'll never get better, it is going to get better.
Yeah.
Whether it's just like time heals all wounds versus like something completely unexpected. Like it is true, like this is college. Like things that you never expect will happen. There's outcomes that you could have never seen coming. So truly, yeah, just hang in there. Like it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
That is the other biggest lesson I learned.
So you mentioned before that it was hard for you to get out there and meet new people going into your freshman year.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to talk about, this transition going into your freshman year. And, you know, for people that might have social anxiety or might develop social anxiety going into college, could you talk a little bit about your experience with that?
I guess I would just say, like, no one is perceiving you the way that you're perceiving yourself. As much as it is, like, obviously with anything like this, easier said than done.
Yeah.
To say, like, just put yourself out there. But, like, truly, like that is probably my biggest regret in terms of college, is letting that fear get the better of me rather than accepting, like, literal worst case scenario, I don't become friends with these people. Oh, well. I tried. I learned something from it. Like, I have 50,000 other people that I can go and try with. Just try. You don't have to succeed, but please, like, just try to put yourself out there. Try to meet people, and don't be discouraged if it doesn't work out perfectly on the first time.
Looking back on your freshman year, where do you think you would have lived if you didn't end up at Morehill?
Well, I guess two answers.
Yeah.
I would have chosen Jester. Like,
Right.
we're talking dorm specifically. I feel like the Jester experience is one that, like, especially living right across the street, I was pretty jealous of.
And where would you live if you could live off campus?
Off campus, I would just live in the co-op
Okay.
where I'm at now, and I would have just done that freshman year. I think it would have been really helpful for me to have a built-in community. It's also a way better, like, room and, like, half the price of the dorms.
So even though you had a challenging freshman year, it seems like you've come out the other side.
Yeah, we're on the up and up.
Yeah.
I can gladly say every year has gotten better
Yeah.
in college,
That's
which,
great.
you know, you can't really hope for anything else at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
So going into your sophomore year,
Yeah.
you moved into New Guild,
Yeah, New Guild Co-op.
which is a co-op.
Love that place.
And we're going to talk all about co-op living in a second. But first, I'm curious how you ended up at New Guild.
Yes, another awesome story about
And
having
that's
to find housing.
sarcasm.
That is, yes, very heavy eye roll on that one, where the timeline was super crunched. Basically, to make it very, very long story short, I had signed a lease with who at the time was my long-distance girlfriend in January. So we like locked down this apartment that we were going to split rent for and signed the lease, went through all the paperwork, paid the security
Was it
deposits.
in West Campus?
No, actually. So I didn't think that I'd be able to afford most of what was in West Campus. And
Because, to go back really fast, you were paying for tuition yourself.
yeah,
You were paying for everything.
I'm paying for everything.
Yeah.
I'm paying for my tuition, housing, like any bills, anything I want.
Did you look at any apartments in West Campus?
I didn't like honestly look too much specifically into West Campus, and I kind of knew that North Campus was a a bit of a potentially cheaper place to live. So yes, it was in North Campus, not
Okay.
West Campus. So we had this place leased, and then in June, she breaks up with me, tells me she's not moving down. And I'm like, oh crap. I mean, oh crud.
I think you could say a lot worse, probably.
It was also just like, man, like this is really the cherry on top of the year that I'm having.
Yeah.
Like this was like the light at the end of the tunnel, like my one shining star. Oh dang, 2 months before I'm gonna live with her, I got broken up with. It was kind of this weird like dissonance where I'm like, I can't even really process this emotionally because I have to find a new place to live.
Yeah.
And not only that, I have to find someone else to take this apartment because the way the contract worked, if you didn't find someone to sublease,
Yeah.
you're responsible for paying whether you live there or not.
Exactly.
Now that
yeah.
I'd be paying a loan, I couldn't afford that. So it was
Yeah.
this like June all the way through the very end of July, I was on like Facebook groups for like Austin subleasing, literally every single day, messaging dozens of people every single day. Went on so many goose chases, had people that were like, yeah, I'll take it, never responded. Literally, I think like July 20 something, I like finished off the process, finally found someone to sublease. That was step one. I still had to find a place to live though.
Yeah.
Literally, I was looking everywhere to
Yeah.
try to find somewhere to live. And it was like the very end of July, I found this 40-year-old woman who was living in a 3-bedroom on like, I know, dude, on like 28th and Guad, like some like rinky-dink apartment. And she was like, oh, I'm gonna have the 2 bigger bedrooms. You can have the tiny one if you want.
Okay.
And I was so happy. I was like, thank God I'm gonna have a place to live. Heck yeah. And I think I started the paperwork, and then she was all of a sudden like, actually, my mom and my sister are moving to Austin. They're gonna live with me. Sucks to suck,
Love.
but you can't live here anymore. And then literally just like out of the blue, she was like, you can't live here, but you should check out the co-ops.
Okay.
And so that is how I found out about the co-ops as like a legitimate option to look into.
Yeah.
I looked into it, and it kind of turned out that that was literally perfect. It was cheaper than everywhere else I'd looked. I loved the idea of living in a community. But yeah, that's the story of how I found New Guild.
Ballpark, how many co-ops are there?
Well, for ICC, there's 9.
Okay.
Which is the organization that I'm a part of. And then there's another one called College Houses, and that one, I think it has 7 in total. It's like 4 that are kind of like the house style, and then 3 that are like apartment style.
Okay. And
Yeah.
they each have, would you say, like their own distinct personality and like
I would say so. I think so.
their vision for what they want the co-op to be?
There's certainly a more universal co-op culture, but I would say that each one has kind of a distinct personality. Like Helios, for example, 15 to 20 people, a lot more chill, laid back, very tight knit. They love to do stuff in a small little community. New Guild, the reason I joined was because it kind of advertised as being more of a party house, where like we're gonna throw parties that a lot of people are gonna come to. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Also a bit bigger, so like 30-ish people, which I thought was exciting. And then like there's some with like 100, 200 people where it's
Oh,
like,
wow.
you're not going to know everyone. It's kind of this like crazy like social experiment almost where like you could meet anyone. There's some that are like completely substance free. There's
Okay.
some that are for LGBT. There's some that are for people of color. So it's kind of a whole different spectrum of
Yeah,
like
that's
different options
great.
of where you can live.
So not to put a like spoiler alert, but you love living there.
Yes.
So kind of looking back, I mean, everything that happened was
Like,
for a
it
reason.
worked out perfectly. Yes.
It was like
literally,
leading you to find New Guild.
It's a gosh dang like storybook ending.
Yeah.
Like everything that happened, everything I went through seemed like it was horrible. And like, yeah, that's a really good point. Like it literally couldn't have worked out better.
You could have lived in the rinky-dink apartment with the 40-year-old
With
lady.
the 40-year-old woman. I could have lived in a really bad North Campus apartment that
Yeah, with your girlfriend that might have broken up with you like
while I was
3
living there. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. And then what do you do in that situation?
Exactly.
Could have been back in a dorm.
Yeah.
Like, so honestly, yes, it is. I've thought about that a lot, and like it is one of those things, like again, going back, like you don't know how things are going to turn out.
Yeah.
And like truly, like just keep on pushing through.
But like everything will be okay.
Yes, it will.
Yeah.
And it has been.
Yeah. Okay. So, New Guild.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was the application process like? Because you had to get in there quick.
Yes. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. So literally by the time I found the co-op system, I think it was literally that first week of August, and school
Wow.
starts like August 20 something. Like
Yeah.
it was like right there. And so I was really worried because most of these other places that I was looking into had a pretty lengthy process to get in there with all these like extra fees and
Yep.
whatnot.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering correctly, it was straight up like, they're like, are you a student? Yes. Okay. Can you pay like something like a $500 security deposit? Yes. Okay. Sign this Google form.
Okay.
A 1 or 2 page Google form that basically says you promise to take certain trainings.
And you do have to qualify for financial aid, right?
Yes, that's the other thing. You have to, in order to live, at least in these co-ops, you do have to, you have to qualify for financial aid. So that is another one of the things that you would submit on that Google form is like show
Yeah.
I got like XYZ scholarship or grant or loan. But yeah, basically a super easy form to sign.
Yeah.
And that was like the extent of it, which for the situation that I was in was kind of a best case scenario.
This episode is brought to you by Daydreamer Cafe, every college student's favorite coffee shop. Daydreamer offers amazing handcrafted coffee, espresso, and my personal favorite, matcha, in a beautifully designed space. With 2 locations on West Campus, Daydreamer is the perfect spot for UT students to grab coffee or study with friends. Download the Daydreamer app and use our promo code BEST410 for 10% off your first mobile order. That's BESTFOUR10. So, co-op living, I think that there's a lot of maybe like, not necessarily like misconceptions, but there's definitely a lot of ideas
There's a lot of opinions
around
for
co-ops.
sure.
I think there's a lot of misinformation potentially.
Yeah.
So can you clear up a little bit about what is a co-op, how you qualify to live there, and what it entails living
Yeah, absolutely.
at a co-op? Yeah.
So the actual definition of a co-op, a cooperative, basically at the end of the day, like the one like check mark that you have to get in order for it to be a co-op is just like a agreement that you are going to take an active part in the upkeep of the community, whether that be like fulfilling a certain amount of chores, participating in the meetings that we have about like culture and whatnot, or like what to spend our money on.
Yeah.
But that's basically how it works. It's like you, by signing up, you're promising that you're going to help out to like keep the community safe.
So talk me through a little bit about the types of chores or duties or tasks that you might be assigned while living at a co-op.
Yeah, so we have different steward positions is a big one. So there's a trustee, which is kind of the intermediary between the people living at the co-op and the organization behind all the co-ops, ICC. You have the treasurer, who obviously is in charge of like the house money that we make from parties or whatever.
Okay.
You have the social steward, who plans parties and kind of in-house events for everybody. There's a kitchen manager who keeps track of like all the food that people want and making sure the kitchen is fully stocked. There's a maintenance steward who does any kind of repairs if they're easy enough and we don't need to like fully bring in the organization. Outside of those positions, like everyone is just responsible for certain things. So like you get to pick what you want, but like there's like dinner cooks. So if people like cooking, then one night out of the week, they can cook dinner for the house.
Yep.
There's dinner cleans. There's, keeping the front and backyard in a good condition, or our porch, or the main like common spaces, keeping those all like well maintained. So I would say like outside of the steward positions, it's a lot of like cooking and cleaning and just like generally keeping the house like a sanitary, like enjoyable place to live.
Yeah. So you mentioned that there's about 30 people that live in New Guild.
Yes.
And you kind of rattled off quite a few positions. Are there people that have like they do more than one thing? Do you guys rotate?
The agreement is that you will sign up for 4 to 5 hours of chores a week.
Okay.
And so like each chore is kind of given a certain amount of like hours that it's worth. So like a steward position, I think, is an hour a week, or maybe 2 for some of the tougher ones. A dinner clean or dinner cook, is like 2 or 3 hours, because you're cooking for 30 people. That takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
A lot of the cleaning ones are more like 1 hour, because a lot of times you're also like, since there's a lot of people, a lot of times people are like put on the same position. I guess going back to like the ideas about a co-op is I feel like that's a big like turnoff for a lot of people.
Is having to do chores.
It's having to do chores, but it's the way I rationalize it is like at the end of the day, you'd be taking care of wherever you lived regardless.
Yeah.
It's also like I mean, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, I love chores, but like, it is a nice feeling to like be a part of where you're living is a nice place to live.
Right.
And like the other honest answer of it is like, hey, I'll take doing 4 to 5 hours of chores a week and saving hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Like, even if you just think of it as like getting paid in a sense of like, oh, I'm able to save X amount of money by doing 5 hours of work. Like, I don't know, you can think of that as like, oh, I'm just making like $100 an hour for 5 hours of chores, basically.
And I wanted to talk to you about the pricing of living in a co-op. If you're comfortable, will you tell me a little bit about the price breakdown?
Economical, yes. Yeah. For ICC, if you live in a double, which does mean that you have a roommate in the room with you, which is what I've done, it's $660 a month.
Okay.
But that's rent, that's utilities and Wi-Fi and parking. Like, it's everything. And the meal plan.
And food.
So, and the meal plan is like, our kitchen is fully stocked all the time. Like, if I didn't ever want to go out to eat, I wouldn't have to. So it's $660 to live in West Campus.
Right.
If you're living in a single, that price is $970, but it's the same rent, utilities, meal plan. The rent is increasing. I think every year your monthly rent is probably going up by like $20, $25, but still comparatively to most things in West Campus, it's on its own level.
Are there any additional pros that you would want to add about living in a co-op?
I guess the way I think about it is it's kind of like come for the price, stay for the culture. Like, yes, economically, it is very much something that benefits me, but I also don't know that I would have stayed if I didn't absolutely love living there outside of all of those factors.
Yeah.
Like, being in a house with 30 really awesome people, like, everyone there is very like artistically inclined. There has been like a house band in previous years that would play at shows throughout West Campus, and just like living in a place like that is really cool. Like, especially as someone that has always had that kind of like creative passion is really interesting. Just being a part of a community that's like very intentionally trying to make everyone have as good a time as possible is like, it's really great.
Yeah. Also, too, you mentioned that you can choose to live at the co-op by semester, which I think is really interesting.
Super flexible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess in general, that's another pro is they're very like student minded or like student
centric.
Yeah. Like they want to make it easy for you. So you can choose to live in like just one semester and not another semester. In terms of like deadlines, they're very lax about all of that. Like if you were to tell them in May, oh, I'm not going to be here over the summer, and then like, or I guess in April, and then in May, you're like, actually, I am going to live here over the summer. As long as that room is still available, they're like, okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And then that's it. There's not any additional work to be done.
Are the rooms furnished?
The rooms, yeah. So they can come furnished or they cannot. If you request it, you can get a bed and bed frame, a desk and a chair.
Okay.
But also, so like.
Does that cost extra?
No, they'll just include that in your price. But also, if you don't want that, like if you want to bring all your own furniture, then you're also welcome to do that as well.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So lots of pros, it seems. Are there any cons of living at a co-op?
There absolutely are, and I would be hiding the full picture if I were to say that there weren't any. The way that I look at it is a co-op ultimately is not for everyone.
Yeah.
Like, if a deal breaker for you is I need to have the newest amenities and all of these really nice things and I want to live in an apartment, like, yeah, at the end of the day, a co-op's not for you. But I do think that the people that end up living at a co-op are probably the kind of people who, throughout their life, have been comfortable kind of making the best out of a situation.
Yeah.
And I think in that scenario, like in the context of that, the personally benefits outweigh the cons. But to talk about some of those cons, the houses are old.
Yeah.
The houses are very old. My bedroom floor is covered in splinters. I had a friend have to go to the emergency room one time because they were dancing and their foot slid like against the wood and a splinter like that big got lodged into their foot. We put a carpet down.
Yeah.
Co-ops in the past have had like bug outbreaks.
Okay.
Like that's a thing that happens. They're like these houses are older, so like
I feel like that can happen anywhere.
I agree. That's
not like everywhere, but
yeah, but it's like
anyway.
It's not like unheard of that like bugs get like I've heard of a lot of people say like, oh, there's flies in my new apartment or something like that. Some other cons would be like appliances can sometimes go out of service. Like it hasn't actually happened too much, but literally right now for the past 2 weeks we haven't had any working laundry machines. Like couple of weeks ago, 3 nights in a row, one of the fire alarms in someone's room was broken. So like 5 in the morning, it was just going off and waking up the whole house, and like the fire department had to come.
I feel like those things happen because you guys
It's
do have
not
a
like-
maintenance person, right? It's just because your maintenance person's been out of town, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I guess I should have said that. The reason the washing and drying has been out was because the guy who would do the maintenance has been on vacation.
But you guys do have a maintenance man.
Yes, we do have a
woman.
person that will come in and do maintenance.
Maintenance
It's not
person.
like we have to find someone. The other biggest con, I would say, which I think is maybe one of the biggest deterrents for people, is you can have some people that do honestly make the house not feel like a safe place to live.
Okay.
I personally, I don't think that that's anything about co-ops that like draw people like that in. I think it's more like if you're living in an apartment, you know who you're living with.
Right.
Or if you're living in like one of your Greek life houses, again, you know everyone you're living with. Whereas
Right.
like this is a house where a bunch of random people are coming together and trying to make it work. And if it doesn't, you're kind of stuck living with that person. So there has been someone in my time living there that did have to be kicked out of the house because of how uncomfortable they were making it for people.
Yeah.
And that is something that you should absolutely be aware of as a possibility, especially in some of the larger 100 to 200 person co-ops.
Yeah.
There's for sure
That's
going to be people in there that
a
are
lot of
not
people.
awesome people. That is something that I would say is like a con to be noted.
Yeah. So you mentioned that co-op living is not necessarily for everybody. So I'm curious, who is co-op living for?
I would say co-op living is for people who want that kind of sense of community, who want to be able to like put in energy into a space and like work together. Like again, that's part of the agreement. So
Yeah.
anyone that's living there is someone who is like comfortable and willing to put in that time to like building the
Yeah.
community themselves.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is a lot of people in financial need, it is way more in their price range.
Yeah.
And that is ultimately a huge factor of it, as it was for me. Like that's a huge draw. Like at the end of the day, I'm saving like conservatively $35,000 by living in a co-op as opposed to living in a West Campus apartment
Yeah.
over the 3 years of living there. Like that's a huge deal. I guess this is like so lame to say,
Nope,
like
nothing's
out
lame
loud,
on the
but
pod.
like the alternative crowd.
Okay.
I guess the way I've always looked at it, and this isn't a perfect example, but it's like if on one side of the college experience you have Greek life, the other side is the co-ops.
Okay.
It's like the counterculture. It's
So-
like,
A follow-up question is, do you think that you have to be extroverted to live in a co-op?
absolutely not. I would say it took me a good semester, maybe even the full sophomore year to really come out of my bubble. And honestly, that's a really good point that you bring up. Like, I've talked about it as if like literally every single person is constantly always hanging out. There's a
Yeah.
good amount of people in the co-op who don't really come out of their rooms a whole bunch. They're just kind of living there, and they're doing what they're supposed to. Like they're doing their
Yeah.
chores. If you talk to them, they are very chill people.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say that you like have to be super outgoing and like constantly want to give energy.
Right.
Like
There
you
are
can-
people like that,
yeah,
I'm sure.
You can just kind of do your own thing, keep to yourself,
Yeah.
and also very much get a lot out of living in a co-op. I would say another big draw for like why people might want to live in the co-op is just the overarching co-op culture. It's not as simple as like, oh, we throw cool parties and if you live in a co-op you get in free. But there is like, which is true, but there is like a very distinct
You're like,
like
come to our parties. Do you say you make money from the parties?
oh yeah.
Okay, so you
Our
do
most
want, you
yeah.
want people to come to your parties.
Yeah, of course. Like they're really cool. Like again, like an entire like West Campus culture where you're just like kind of surrounded by very like artistically driven people. Being a part of that kind of like internal like culture, like being in the know, I guess, of like,
Yeah.
oh, this party's being thrown here. These bands are going. Like my friend's friends with that guy. Like that's just like a really awesome thing to be a part of.
It is, yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. So you renewed for your junior.
I did without
Year.
a second thought.
Yeah. And you're going into your senior year. Yeah. So was there anything different living at the co-op your junior year versus sophomore year? Anything to note?
I would say like really the biggest change was my roommates. I've actually had 3 roommates now because my
Okay.
sophomore year I had 1 different roommate each semester.
Okay.
When I first moved in, I had this one roommate, definitely was not the house for him.
I'm assuming he left.
He realized that was not the place for him. He ended up going to like the substance-free, like no nonsense.
Do you get any
kind of
say
co-op.
of your roommates at all?
Yeah, you can pick your roommates. That's what I ended up doing this semester.
Okay.
Or this full junior year. So yeah, once he moved out first semester, I had about a month of no roommate in spring, which was really awesome.
Slay.
And then my next roommate moved in. He was super chill. Really, like, I got along with him. We didn't talk a whole bunch, but like we had a good mutual understanding. Like, I would say we were definitely friends.
Yeah.
And then my best friend from high school moved in with me for my junior year.
Yay.
So I guess long-winded way of saying, big difference between sophomore and junior year living there was the roommates.
Yeah.
And having my best friend from high school be my roommate for junior year was, like, it just made the whole experience so much better.
Yeah. And then you decided to sign again for this upcoming year.
Yep.
Very different experience than I feel like most students at UT,
I think
living
so.
in a co-op.
I think so. Like, outside of people who live in the co-op, you don't really hear about people that live in a co-op very much. Like,
Yeah.
even my freshman year, I'd heard the term a couple of times.
Yeah.
And every time I heard what it was like hippie commune, like gross
Exactly,
place
yeah, I
that I
think
was
there's
like,
a
oh, I
lot
don't want to
of-
live there. And it's like, oh, finding out what it is, it's literally, I could not have ended up somewhere better.
Looking back at your housing journey so far, is there anything you think you would have done differently?
Knowing what I know now, I would have lived in the co-op my freshman year also, for like all the reasons I've mentioned already, like price, culture, what have you. And I think it would have been a really big like help.
Would you say that you should sign your leases sooner?
That is so true. Yes. Freshmen are not guaranteed housing, so you have to proactively pick your housing and do an application.
And I know it was outside of your control, but just thinking back to you scrambling in like July trying to find a place to live in August, like, you
Yeah.
know, if you can prevent it, like try not to.
Yes. If you can prevent
If you can prevent it, yeah.
try to find housing sooner than the first week of August
Yeah.
before you move in.
And then any just general advice for incoming students? I know we talked a little bit about it specifically to your freshman year experience, but just overall general advice.
I mean, time moves really fast, so like don't take it for granted. Like take advantage of every day. It's pretty cliched advice, but like again, one of my biggest regrets is just like taking so long to put myself out there. So I would say it's going to be scarier looking back, realizing how much you didn't do, than it will be scary doing things in the moment, I guess. So really just like know that there are so many different opportunities, so many different like things that you can discover just by having the courage to put yourself out there, and you're going to feel so much better doing that. And I would say also just like keep an open mind about things. Again, like you don't know how things are going to turn out. Something that looks like it's going to be terrible turns into the best thing that could have happened to you. And yeah, do your research before it's too late.
Yeah. And maybe would you say going to a couple of co-op parties?
And go to New Guild's parties. I'm looking at you right there.
And then last thing is, do you think that these are shaping up to be the best 4 years of your life?
These are definitely, without a doubt, 4 of the years of my life that I've lived. I don't want to be super pessimistic. I would say I have grown more in these past 3 years than I have throughout the rest of my life, learned more lessons, matured, and there have been countless invaluable experiences and memories made that I'll remember and cherish for the rest of my life. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for coming on today and talking
course.
to me about, you know, your experiences.
Yeah, thank you for
Really
having me
appreciate
on.
it. And we will see you guys next time. Bye. Thank you so much for listening, y'all. If you like this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review. It helps us out a lot. For more info and to learn about our partners, visit thebest4pod.com. Make sure to follow us on TikTok and Instagram at thebest4pod. We'll see you next time.